Welcome to EtherLink AI Insights. I'm Alex, and I'm joined today by Sam. We're diving into a topic that's become impossible to ignore for enterprises across Europe: EU AI Act compliance and the governance frameworks you need in place by 2026. Sam, August 2nd, 2026. That's less than 2 years away. Why should Amsterdam-based companies be losing sleep over this deadline right now?
Great question, Alex. The EU AI Act isn't some distant regulatory proposal anymore. It's law, and the enforcement date is concrete. What makes this urgent is the gap we're seeing in the data. McKenzie found that 60% of enterprises lack formal AI governance frameworks. Meanwhile, 74% are throwing money at AI spending. You've got organizations deploying AI agents and co-pilots into production without documented risk registers or audit trails. That's a ticking time bomb.
That's a stark contrast. 74% prioritizing AI spend, but only 35% with mature governance. How material are the penalties if an organization gets this wrong?
The teeth are real, Alex. Non-compliance fines reach up to $30 million or 6% of annual global revenue, whichever is higher. For a mid-market enterprise, that's potentially existential. But it's not just the financial hit. Regulatory enforcement triggers operational disruption, reputation damage, and customer trust erosion. The enterprises that move now aren't just avoiding penalties, they're building competitive moats.
Interesting framing. Governance as a competitive advantage rather than just a compliance tax. Let's dig into what that governance framework actually looks like. What are we talking about structurally?
The EU AI Act uses a risk-based classification system. You've got prohibited AI, things like facial recognition in public spaces, that Amsterdam enterprises hopefully aren't touching. Then high-risk AI, biometric identification, critical infrastructure decisions, employment selections, law enforcement applications. Most enterprise use cases fall into high-risk or limited-risk categories. A customer service AI agent might be limited risk, but an AI system screening job applicants? That's high risk. The classification dictates your governance obligations.
So the compliance requirements aren't one size fits all. You need to understand where your specific AI systems land on that spectrum first. That sounds like it requires a structured assessment process.
Exactly. That's where readiness assessments come in. Before you even architect governance, you need a baseline. You're mapping organizational readiness. Do you have the skills, the governance structure, executive alignment, data readiness? Is your data quality where it needs to be? Do you have lineage documentation, privacy controls? And technical readiness. What's your MLOps maturity? Do you have a model registry? Can you track model drift?
Those sound like the unglamorous fundamentals that don't make headlines but absolutely matter. Walk us through what good looks like on one of those dimensions. Let's say technical readiness.
Technical readiness means you can answer critical questions. Can I trace every model I have in production? Can I reproduce how a model made a decision? Do I have monitoring that catches when model performance degrades? Can I version control my training data? For high-risk AI systems, you need audit trails that would satisfy a regulator. If your MLOps is still spreadsheets and ad hoc training runs, you're miles away. Mature technical readiness means automated testing, model registries, experiment tracking, deployment pipelines, the infrastructure that makes governance enforceable.
That infrastructure sounds like it has to be thought about from day one, not bolted on later. Is that where the AI lead architecture concept comes in that we mentioned in the title?
Yes, AI-led architecture is basically fractional CTO-level guidance for building AI systems with governance baked in from inception. Instead of pilots that never scale cleanly into governance-compliant deployments, you're designing with compliance requirements, risk management, and auditability as first-class concerns. It's the difference between building a prototype and building a system that can operate under regulatory scrutiny.
I like that distinction. Let's talk about risk management specifically. You mentioned risk registers earlier. How does risk management fit into this framework?
Risk management is the connective tissue. You're identifying what can go wrong with each AI system: bias in hiring decisions, model drift in medical diagnostics, security vulnerabilities in data pipelines. Then you're documenting mitigations and controls. For high-risk systems, the EU AI Act expects documented risk assessments and human-in-the-loop processes. You can't just deploy an AI system that makes consequential decisions without humans in the decision loop. Risk management documentation isn't bureaucratic overhead. It's how you prove to regulators that you've thought through failure modes and you're managing them actively.
So human oversight isn't optional for high-risk systems. It's mandated. How does that change how enterprises architect AI workflows?
It forces intentionality. Instead of building fully autonomous AI agents that humans never touch, you're designing systems where humans have meaningful control points. A content moderation AI might flag content, but humans make the final removal decision. A fraud detection system scores transactions, but analysts investigate flagged cases. It sounds like it slows things down, but actually it builds trust and prevents costly mistakes. The enterprises that design this way find that human-AI collaboration is often more effective than pure automation anyway.
That's a pragmatic insight. Let's zoom back out. An Amsterdam enterprise is hearing this and thinking, okay, where do I even start? What's the roadmap?
Start with a readiness assessment, honest inventory of where you are on those 5 dimensions: organizational, data, technical, governance structure, and ethics governance. That gives you a baseline. Then prioritize. Which AI systems pose the most risk? Focus there first. You don't need to governance enable everything overnight, but you need a credible plan to hit August 2026. That usually means months 2 through 24, focused on building infrastructure, documenting policies, and stress testing your high-risk systems.
So it's not a project. It's a program spanning nearly 2 years. What's the role of ethics governance in all this? That feels like a separate piece.
Ethics governance gets lumped in with compliance, but it's conceptually distinct. Compliance is about meeting regulatory requirements, documentation, audit trails, human oversight. Ethics governance is about values, fairness, transparency, accountability, and how your AI systems impact people. The EU AI Act has ethics requirements baked in, but ethics is also a business and cultural issue. Organizations that embed ethics early find it's harder to deploy biased or opaque systems because the culture pushes back. It becomes a competitive advantage.
So you could technically be compliant but unethical, but being ethical actually supports your governance posture overall.
Precisely. An AI system that passes technical compliance audits but is systematically biased against certain populations will eventually fail, either through regulatory pressure, customer backlash, or litigation. The enterprises building governance frameworks that incorporate ethics from day one are positioning themselves for long-term resilience, not just short-term regulatory avoidance.
Okay, let's talk about a real scenario. Say an Amsterdam fintech startup has built an AI agent for loan underwriting. It's working well, approvals are faster, but it's probably high risk under the EU AI Act. What does compliance look like for that system?
That's a textbook high-risk system. First, they need to document the risk assessment. What could go wrong? Loan denials based on protected characteristics like gender or ethnicity. Model drift as market conditions change. Then, mitigations. Bias testing across demographic groups. Explainability requirements so loan officers understand the recommendation. Human review of all denials or borderline cases. They need a model registry documenting which version is in production, training data lineage, performance monitoring, audit trails on every decision. If a regulator asks, "Show me how this decision was made," they need to produce it in minutes, not weeks.
That sounds intensive, but also like it would actually reduce false positives and customer complaints in practice, right?
Absolutely. The discipline of building auditable systems tends to surface issues early. You catch model drift before it becomes a business problem. You spot bias patterns before they trigger regulatory complaints. It's preventative, not just reactive, and loan officers who have some visibility into the AI's reasoning actually make better decisions than ones flying blind.
That's a powerful argument. Let's talk timeline again. If an organization is hearing this in early 2025, are they already behind?
They're cutting it close, but not impossible. 20 months is tight, especially if you're starting from zero governance infrastructure. But the organizations that move now, first half of 2025, can dedicate Q1 and Q2 to readiness assessment and planning, use the next year building infrastructure and policies, and spend the final months on stress testing and refinement. If you wait until 2026, you're in crisis mode. Better to move now, even if imperfectly, than scramble later.
What role does an external partner play in this? Is this something enterprises should tackle in-house, or is there real value in bringing in specialists?
Most enterprises benefit from external perspective. Your internal teams are deep in the weeds of their own systems and blind spots. An external audit brings fresh eyes, best practices from across industries, and regulatory expertise. You don't need a massive consulting engagement. Fractional guidance through readiness assessments and architecture reviews can be incredibly efficient. The goal is giving your internal teams a roadmap they can execute autonomously. Specialists accelerate the process and reduce the risk of expensive mistakes.
Makes sense. So stepping back, what's the one thing you'd want an enterprise leader in Amsterdam hearing this to remember?
Organizations that treat governance as a compliance checkbox will fail. Those that embed governance into AI architecture from inception create sustainable competitive advantage. The difference between a breached system and a resilient one often comes down to how governance was architected at layer 1. Start now, be systematic, and treat this as a business opportunity, not just a regulatory burden.
Sam, thank you. For listeners who want to dig deeper into readiness assessments, governance frameworks, and compliance strategies specific to Amsterdam enterprises, head over to EtherLink AI and find the full article. You'll find specific checklists, a maturity model, and concrete next steps. This is Alex, and we'll be back next week with more EtherLink AI Insights. Thanks for listening.